Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly Podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lifford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Today's Homeowner Podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Starting a garden. It's kind of like starting a family. You care for it, watch it grow, and if you get the right brand, like Bonnie Plants Harvest Select, you watch it grow a lot. You start to feel a real bond with your plant family. Just don't name them, because they're gonna be delicious. Get help donating your surplus to local food banks from the Home Depot and ampleharvest.org. It feels like spring at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
This week, we'll share with you some tips on building an attached garage. That can be a great thing to add on to your existing house. Also, what do you do with cracks in a concrete driveway? Can you really successfully fix those and camouflage them a little bit? Well, we'll tell you the best chance you have on doing that. Also, tips on outdoor kitchens. Everybody wants an outdoor kitchen. We'll tell you some ways that you can make it happen. And indoor air quality. We talk about it a lot. It's so important, and that really starts with making sure your exhaust fans are exhausting the air all the way to the outside. We'll share with you some tips on that. Joe, speaking of tips, how about that simple solution coming up?
All right, Danny, it's a great time of year to start planting window boxes. So I've got 4 tips to make sure those flowers grow healthy and happy.
A 4-in-1 simple solution.
There you go.
Right here on the Today's Homeowner Podcast.
It's a grand slam simple solution.
Grand slam. Okay, that sounds great. Let's get started right now. Joe, I was very intrigued. Joe and I are constantly sending information back and forth about all kinds of things that we see. And one that really caught my eyes, you're talking about the 12 cities where home buying is cheaper than renting.
Yeah, how about that?
You know, traditionally, people rent because it is a little more budget-friendly than everything behind home buying, but things are so different these days with interest rates being down, but the prices of actual housing being up so high. So where did you come, where did the basis of this premise of the 12 cities?
Well, there's an online report that's put out by the National Mortgage News. They're in charge of statistics regarding mortgage rates all across the country. An interesting thing about this I found is that often with something like this, these are the 12 cities where home buying is cheaper than renting. Sometimes it's clustered in one part of the country, but these 12 are scattered throughout the whole country, East Coast to West Coast, North to South.
Yeah, I noticed some of those. Let's see, number 12, I guess, on the list here that you sent me, Philadelphia.
Right.
So that's one of the areas there. Then you can move down to St. Louis, back up to Detroit, Hartford up near where you are, there in Hartford, Connecticut, and then I see it goes way down south to Tampa.
Tampa, yeah. It started, again, here we are. We're going from like all the way up from Hartford, Connecticut, Tampa, and then Baltimore in the middle Atlantic, then down to your neighborhood, Danny, New Orleans, and where I spent 4 or 5 years living, learning my trade in Miami, Florida. And this was surprising, Riverside, California. I didn't realize any place in California was affordable, whether you're buying or renting.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Yeah.
And then why don't you share with our listeners the last 3, the top 3?
So we got Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Then you have Chicago. And then you have another city very similar to Chicago, and that's Cleveland, Ohio. So kind of interesting how things have changed around a little bit. Of course, what's ahead, we'll always kind of keep an eye on it and monitor everything we can. Those interest rates starting to click up just a little bit here. Hopefully that can help adjust some of these pricing that's still way too high on lumber and other materials. And then we're still almost every day I'm hearing stories, Joe, about the supply and the demand issue in so many ways that it's affecting home remodeling and home building. Boy, I hope that changes around soon.
Well, we said that a few months ago, and we thought it was going to change, and the prices did drop quite a bit, and then they went back up, and they've been holding steady. So I'm not sure what to say. It's all a supply and demand. The demand's there, and the supply is not. So we're just going to have to wait. There's not really a shortage of trees to cut down. It's just a shortage of workers to mill them into boards and ship them out to stores and Home Depot and places like that.
Well, no matter what takes place on a national level like that, one thing we know for sure, you want to keep your house in as good a shape as you possibly can. A few weeks ago, we had a question that spawned a lot of interest, and that is with the glass top cooktops, how do you really clean those? And boy, I have seen people do all the wrong things there and get a little aggressive. But Joe, we got an email here from a listener Clint
All right.
in Wenatchee, Washington, that listens to us on KPQ Radio 560. He says, Danny and Joe, I love your show. Here's a great tip for cleaning glass stovetops. I've been using, here's a familiar product that we've recommended a lot, Barkeeper's Friend Cleanser, along with the coarse side of a kitchen sponge for about 9 years now. It works great, leaves everything just spotless, and there's no scratches at all. If I have an excessive buildup, I very carefully use a one-sided razor blade with the holder, things that you do a lot of paint scraping with on glass. So you still have to be very, very careful. But there you go, another use for Barkeeper's Friend. He also goes on to say, and this is in reference to some conversation we had about some of the destruction aspects, deconstruction, where you're trying to remove that molding very carefully and not damage anything else. His Clint's recommendation there on removing molding without damaging the drywall, I use an old putty knife, slip it behind the molding first, then use a pry tool sliding down the front of the putty knife. So that's just keeping it from, just putting a little bit of protection there. And it's very thin, so that allows you to be able to work it very easily versus putting a piece of wood and so forth. But we appreciate these tips and any follow-up that you can give us on something that's worked well around your house, and we'll share it with our listeners all across the country. So Clint from Washington, thanks so much for that. Joe, pretty good tips there.
Yeah, it is. Hey, we often say when we share simple solutions or any other kind of tips, if you have an idea, send it along. We'll share it with our listeners. And the other tip when you're removing molding, if you're removing baseboard molding or any kind of trim and you're going to replace it, often when you pry it off the wall, the nails are stuck in the molding. And you always pull them out from the back side. Don't ever hammer them through to the front, which would be the first thing you might think of. Well, I'll just hammer them through and pull them from the front. But if you hammer them through from the back, what they do is they blast out the wood on the front and leave, they can chip the front. So you just take a pair of snips and just pull them out from the back. Just pull them through, pull the head through. And this way you have a nice clean surface in the front. Still have the nail holes there, but it'll be a nice clean surface.
Boy, we have certainly reused a lot of molding, and you realize, some of the molding's starting to change just a little bit. And when you're really trying for that high level of authenticity in tying in a new area to an old area in your home, saving that molding is one of the key ways of really making that work very well. Hey, Joe, another thing a lot of people are doing is the same thing we did on a Today's Homeowner episode last week.
What's that?
And that's garage organization. Great time of the year to kind of purge that garage a little bit. And one of the things that we have found in a lot of the projects we've done like this is to find the space within your garage to build a storage container rack. Now, we've done this vertically where you take the little storage containers or totes, as many people call them, and stack them vertically. But this particular time, we actually built a workbench. It was about 38 inches tall. And then under it, there was room for actually two levels of the totes. We did it about 8 foot long, so we were able to actually put in 10 totes.
Wow.
The husband was quick to say, "These are mine, these are yours." So there's
those 2 are yours.
Yeah,
these 8 are mine.
So there's always a little negotiation in any garage reorganization, because you quickly determine who's the hoarder and who's the one that's not. And sometimes it gets a little tense out there, but it all turned out very, very well. And that will be an episode that you'll be able to see very soon on the Today's Homeowner television show. But I think it's a great time. And, of course, as we all know, with any reorganization, that all starts with purging a few things, donating a few things, going to Facebook Marketplace and maybe monetizing a few things. But either way, that's the first step in being able to really part and really make those areas look a lot better. And what do you know? We even ended up with 2 cars in this 2-car garage.
Good for you.
Yeah, that was a level of success. Right now, we're going to head to Maryland. Jonna is on the phone. Jonna, I understand you're about to add on to your house. Welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on around there.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you guys today. I've been a fan for a while now.
Oh, great. Thank you.
My question for you is, my husband and I want to build an attached garage to our house. And where the right side wall of this garage will be is a large stacked block retaining wall. And we don't know what to do. Do we take this wall down? Do we, leave it up and build beside it?
Okay. I'm looking at the pictures of it. I appreciate you sending that. And I had a very similar situation I was considering at my previous house where I had a retaining wall situation like this. There's a couple of things here that I noticed. First of all, it appears that the retaining wall does overlap onto the house. I'm just guessing 6 or 8 inches, something like that. So it does look like it kind of goes into there just a little bit. And
Yes.
is this a wall that has been there since you purchased the house?
Yes.
Or did you and your husband have this put up? Oh, so it was there before.
Yes.
Okay. And I would assume you probably have a little bit of moisture leaking through that wall from time to time.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, the only thing that you can really be foolproof on a situation like this is to actually remove the wall so that you can put a conventional wall there. Now, when you're talking about a conventional wall, you still it needs to be either poured concrete or using concrete blocks, cinder blocks to build that up. You're going to have a pretty substantial foundation because you're going to have some rebar running vertically in order to support that wall with that amount of dirt that's pushing up against it. And the other thing about it that makes it a little more of a project is you're really going to have to do waterproofing on the back side of that because you don't want a garage that ends up with moisture soaking through it, and it's not sufficient enough to waterproof just the inside of that block. You're going to have to put a membrane on the back side of it. Now, this sounds like an extreme for something that is not living space, but it's still a very important part of that so that you don't have any of that moisture that migrates through there. So now, some people are concerned when you take a block wall down like this, whether or not the soil behind it will maintain where it is.
Right.
Very, very rarely, unless it is a lot of sand back there, very rarely will you have that problem because you have, roots of your grass and so forth holding it together. It's all packed in place. So I don't think you're going to have that problem at all.
That's what we were worried about, is it would fall in.
No, I seriously doubt it. The only thing is, though, in order to create that space that you will need for the membrane is going to be a little tricky because, the wall appears to be about 8 inches wide. Mm-hmm. And so when you remove it and then you line your blocks up, your new wall for your garage, up with your house, you're creating about a foot of space between it there. And that may not be enough to work that membrane down in it. So you actually may have to do just a little bit of digging back on that wall in order to get your block wall in, the membrane on the back side of it, and then you can start the backfilling process against it. And anybody that does concrete foundations, this is a somewhat routine job for them to do, and I would certainly consult with them on making sure the most key wall to the whole structure is done right.
Okay. I see what you mean.
It sounds like a lot of drama and it sounds like a lot of work, but boy, if you only get one chance at that to be able to do it right.
Right. All right. I really appreciate it. Can I give you a quick tip?
Certainly can. Yeah, we'd love to. Love to hear it.
You guys were talking a while back about cleaning shower glass doors.
Uh-huh.
Use glass cooktop cleaner. It works great.
Oh, is that right? Okay, because it's essentially made out of the same material when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it works real well.
Good. All right, well, we'll pass that along to everybody. We appreciate you sharing that, and we appreciate you being a part of the show today.
Thank you for talking with me.
Okay, our pleasure, Johanna. You take care. Joe, of course, one of the things there, too, depending on how this wall plays out, almost without a doubt, a French drain, a traditional real French drain with gravel, the sock pipe, that will catch that water that soaks down to the bottom of that wall and moves it out. And usually when you have retaining walls like this, you almost can just move it out and turn it onto the driveway if there's not an area further down. But it looks like from the pictures that traditional French drain can be used fairly easily.
Yeah, you have to put a French drain if you're going to be putting in the garage anyway. But if our question was, can we just build the garage on top of that wall? Well, retaining walls are not designed to be structural in that way. So I would be really surprised if a local engineer or building inspector would allow them to do that anyway. So their only option is to tear it down or build it in front of it. If they're going to pour a concrete foundation, which I would recommend as opposed to a block foundation, they could pour it right up against that wall. That's another option if you don't want to remove it. It was hard to tell from those photographs, and she didn't say it, but it seems like behind that wall, it's not backfilled all the way to the top of the wall. It looks like there's a walkway behind it that goes up to a deck or something. So, I don't know. Regardless, I think they won't be able to build right on top of that wall, certainly.
No, and that's one of the things that people do try to do, even if it's a half wall. Never recommended because it's not designed for that weight that you'll have on it. So hopefully they'll be able to get their nice garage. Your garage is a nice thing to add to a home when you don't have one and you're parking out in the snow and the rain and the heat. It's kind of nice to have one. So best of luck on that. Let's go to our emails right now. We'd love to get an email from you. Send us one right now or anytime by going to todayshomeowner.com/ask. This one came in from Punta Gorda, Florida, from Barbara. Says, hello, Danny. I love your show, and I recently had the walls of my family room painted gray, but the tiles and the grout around the gas fireplace are beige. Is it safe to paint tiles and grout? If so, what kind of paint should I use? So it sounds like they're doing a little bit of facelifting there, a little modernization. What do you think about the tiles and the grout to try to change the color on that, Joe?
Well, it's not clear. Is she unhappy with just the grout or the grout and the tile? If it's just the grout, the color of the grout, I would remove the grout and put in different color grout, or you could try staining the grout. But if she wants to paint the tile and the grout, I'm not a big fan of that because it doesn't look like it doesn't look like a tile wall anymore, of course, because you don't see the difference between the grout and the tile. But they do make, if you scrub it really clean and use a paint designed for putting on tile, you'd sand it a little bit, remove all the dust, and use a really good, maybe an epoxy acrylic or a really good house paint or something like that. I mean, it's going to be paint and it's going to still get dirty and you're still going to have to repaint it occasionally, especially around a fireplace, which it's a gas fireplace, but it still might get stained a little bit. So I think I would probably just change the grout unless the tile itself is the issue.
Yeah, and if the grout is not sealed, you could actually stain the grout. You can use a grout coloring and use a small little artist brush. And when you're talking about a fireplace area, it's a fairly small area, so you would be able to change that up. And as you mentioned, Joe, that can significantly change the look of something because sometimes the grout is just faded and it's old and it's inconsistent, and that takes away from the crisp lines that you should have with grout, and so that's a very, very easy one there. Hey, coming up, if you're tired of any of those cracks in your driveway, well, there's a way that it can be repaired, and there's a number of reasons why it should be repaired so that the driveway holds up as long as you expect it to. We're going to tackle that and a lot more right here.
Do you hear that? The sounds of spring. There's the birds, the spring breeze blowing through the leaves, and the Ryobi Whisper Series blower. And that's the new Ryobi Whisper walk mower. And there's the Ryobi Whisper Series string trimmer, all with interchangeable lithium-ion batteries and gas-like power. It feels like spring at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Today's Homeowner is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
It's time for our Best New Product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Sometimes we see innovations on home appliances that make us ask, who really needs that? Samsung's answer is the 4-door Flex Food Showcase refrigerator, which has multiple innovations for your family that they really can use. For starters, the Beverage Center includes both a water dispenser and an autofill water pitcher. Then there's the dual ice maker, which makes 2 different sizes of ice. For real flexibility, the lower right side of this 4-door fridge can easily be converted from a fridge to a freezer, the temperatures, whatever you need to meet your family's specific needs. And there's a flexible storage drawer with 2 customizable temperature settings. It's perfect for storing meat, vegetables, or cheeses at the proper temperature. Plus, there's a built-in deodorizer filter with UV technology that continuously cleans the filter itself. So, for more information on the Samsung 4-door Flex Food Showcase refrigerator, log on and check it out at homedepot.com. Joe, the refrigerators are just they're taking on a life of their own. There's just so many different things there, and that's pretty interesting. Who really needs that? Well, this shows you that there's a lot of different things and different options that are there that you really can use around the house.
Yeah, and that's the first time I've heard of a refrigerator. There's a compartment that you can switch from freezer or to refrigerator. That's actually pretty interesting, because sometimes you don't need as much frozen food.
That's right.
Space. You need more fresh food storage or whatever they call it. So that's really pretty clever.
That's pretty good. Let's get right back to the Today's Homeowner Hotline, and you can call us anytime at 800-946-4420. We're going to Boise, Idaho. David's on the line. David, welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on around your house that we can help you with.
I'm calling to discuss a 12-foot long crack I have in my concrete driveway. It's a relatively stable crack, meaning I can't see it move, and I'm going to repair it this spring. For preparation, I plan to use a 3/8-inch crack chaser on an angle grinder to clean out the crack. I then either put bond breaker tape across the bottom or install 1/4-inch backer rod if I can get it to fit. My questions surround what's the best material to effect the repair. I seem to have three options: a low modulus sealant, for example, Dow Corning 790, epoxy, something like PC Products 2-part epoxy, or pre-mixed concrete patching products, which I'd like to use with a bonding agent. So
sounds like you've done your homework there,
yeah,
David.
Certainly.
That sounds great.
Well, I try.
Good.
The thing about it is, first of all, the crack is an expansion crack, obviously, so it's moving all of the time depending on the weather and the thermal conditions. So you have to have something in there that's going to move. It's like a control joint or a relief joint. And to tell you the truth, David, what we recommend and has been very successful in repairs that we've done and others have done is simply just take an old screwdriver, a slotted screwdriver, and just clean out, just kind of make a little groove. You don't have to groove it out too much. And then take either your shop vac or your leaf blower and blow all of that debris out of that crack completely. Then I would use a concrete repair caulk. Quikrete has a great one that actually has texture in the tube. And the thing that most people do wrong is they just simply use too much of it, and then you have a lot of it that's overlapping on either side of the crack. But if you really are careful in trying to feed it just in the crack itself, then use a putty knife to surface it out and to clean it well. That will hold up better than anything I've ever seen, to where if a little expansion and contraction happens in the future, it won't show up as a crack. It just moves the material in and out. And I think that's probably the way I would approach it. Joe, we deal with a lot of concrete driveways like this. What's your thoughts on it?
That's what Danny just told you is certainly one option. Thanks for sending that photograph, David. I usually do recommend using foam rubber backer rod. Now, that is such a narrow joint, at least it looks really narrow in the photograph, that you'd have to cut it open pretty wide even to get in a 1/4-inch backer rod or something even smaller than that. But if you can get a backer rod in there, that's fine. A backer rod, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's just looks like a rope, but it's made out of foam rubber, and you stuff it in there so partially fill that hole, because caulking is usually only good, any kind of sealant is usually only good to about a 1/4 inch deep, no matter what it says on the tube. But yeah, clean it out really well, vacuum it or blow it out. And then what I've found that works really well is there's a company called Sika, Sika. They make professional products, and they make a polyurethane caulking called Sika Flex. It's a self-leveling sealant, which is what I like. So as long as your driveway isn't on a really steep slope, this would work, because you just put it in there and it just self-levels out itself, and it's very flexible. As Danny said, it's good to have something flexible in there to accommodate any movement in that joint. So I would check that out. It's called Sika Flex. And then the other thing you do is, before it dries completely, if you sprinkle sand over the top, wait for it to dry, probably overnight, then use a leaf blower to blow off the excess sand. The repair will kind of blend in a little more with the concrete surface. Otherwise, obviously, it would be very clear where that crack was.
Yes. Can you tell me the name of the product first mentioned? Not the Sika, but before that.
Yeah, that's it's Quikrete, and that's quick without the C, Quikrete, R-E-T-E. And if you went to quikrete.com, you'd see it. It's a mortar repair caulk.
Called driveway repair, and it's flexible, it has that texture to it. Works pretty good. I've tried it a lot of times.
Yeah. But, yeah, it sounds like I'm on the right track and kind of avoid the epoxy, avoid the premixed concrete products.
Right. Nothing hard, nothing that dries hard.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting out of our conversation.
And while you're there at Quikrete, you might also check out their resurfacing material that we've used a lot called Recap. RECAP. Check that out in some of the videos that are available to that if you decide to, once you get the crack filled, to completely resurface all or part of the driveway. Works really well. I've used it many times.
Okay, very good.
All right, David, well, thanks so much for being with us today on the Today's Homeowner Radio Show, and best of luck on that.
Thank you very much. Are you interested in the results?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Let us know and follow up so that we can follow up with everybody else.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you much, David, and have a great weekend. That's one of those things when you're having the maintenance around the house, and if you ignore cracks like this, water will get down in there sooner or later and potentially cause a few problems on the driveway.
And as David said, that crack's 12 feet long. It didn't become 12 feet overnight.
Exactly.
Probably was 1 foot long at one point.
That's right. Now, you may have been saying to yourself, this is the year I'm going to have an outdoor kitchen. And whether you're building it yourself or having someone create this great area right outside your back door, there's some great tips that you need to hear from us, brought to you by our friends at Exmark. This is part of their Backyard Life Tips. And one of the things we want to tell people is more and more homeowners are really adding these outdoor kitchens because families want to create their own retreats centered around that outdoor cooking. These projects are more involved than just parking a kettle grill and a picnic table on the patio, but they don't have to be ultra expensive to be functional and attractive.
No, not anymore, Danny. Many homeowners have discovered that they can create the look of a high-end outdoor kitchen by building cabinets around their existing grill, so it has that really built-in look, that built-in feel you see in a professional kitchen. So if you're considering this kind of project, remember that the materials adjacent to the grill must be non-combustible, right, because they're going to be up against some hot surfaces, and the countertop materials have to withstand the weather. So concrete backer board with stone, ceramic tiles, those are good choices to meet both of those requirements.
Now, if you want to include a refrigerator in the space, be sure it's designed for outdoor use, or it may not stay cool in hot water, or it'll freeze up in the cold weather. It should also be protected from rainfall and plugged into an outlet with a ground fault circuit interrupter.
And of course, a heat source like a gas patio heater or fire pit is another great addition to an outdoor kitchen because it'll allow you to extend the number of days each year you can use the area, but also create a great atmosphere for your family and friends to gather, especially in the evenings.
All these tips are brought to you by our friends at Exmark, the official mowers of the Backyard Life. And for more great ideas and inspiration for your outdoors, check them out at Exmark.com/backyard. Right now, we're going to head back to the Today's Homeowner Hotline. We'll head up to New Hampshire. Russ is on the line. Russ, tell us what's going on with these bathroom exhaust fans.
Well, let me give you a little background. House was built in 1977. I've been there since 86. I brought up 5 boys in that home. Put an addition on about maybe 20 years ago, added another bathroom, so that equals 3. But the 2 originals that were in the home, the old master bedroom and the main bathroom, they're back-to-back. I replaced the bathroom fans probably 10 years ago. And I noticed at the beginning when I removed the old, there was no vent, whether it's through the soffit and or the roof. So I made the replacement. They worked fine. I didn't really vent these things, even after 10 years. I'm in the process. I want to replace them again. I think it's about time. I'm a little reluctant about going the soffit way. I would prefer to go through the roof, but a little hesitant about putting a hole in my roof.
Sure. Well, most people are, but it really involves the most important criteria is the what's the closest way to the outside. So, if you have a situation there where you're able to go over to a gable end or a soffit vent and it's closer than going out the roof, then I would go those other alternatives and not put another hole in the roof. But if that's the closest way, that's the way I would do it. Now, I would also use smooth vent pipe, the corrugated type pipe, provides a little bit of resistance for the exhaust, and that's just not going to work as well. But you get that straight pipe, goes straight to the outside, and if you don't feel comfortable getting on the roof or cutting the roof, roofers, it's a very common request for them to come by and just to put the one vent in, and that'll make such a difference. And another thing, when you're out there buying those new exhaust fans, boy, they're so much quieter these days for us than before, and they're also a lot more powerful. So, and if you want to really have some fun in that master bathroom, go ahead and get the one that has the Bluetooth speaker in it, and that way you can have a little music while you're taking the shower.
There you go. I think that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
And also not a bad idea, because of you living there in the Northeast, is to go ahead and take the time to insulate that pipe while you have it out. That'll just prevent any chance of any condensation later on. But you'll be glad you did that, and that'll get that hot, moist air out of the house and out of the bathrooms, and that's a good, healthy scenario for everybody.
One other quick thing: is it feasible to cap that vent pipe or leave it open?
In terms of capping it,
capping in reference to, say, a deflector cap, so no water's coming down into it.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah, you'll have a cap that goes over it that actually will have a little damper in it, so that the damper stays closed when the fan is not being used, but will open as soon as it feels that air pressing against it, and that'll keep the cold air out, that'll keep the bugs out, and that kind of thing, and that'll protect. It'll provide a good flashing protection of any moisture from getting down into the attic, or worse, into the bathroom.
Now, I would think that, real quickly, probably lifting these shingles when it gets a little warmer is probably preferred, correct?
It is a better way of doing it. Using a flat bar to slip under those, get a good sharp hook bill razor knife to cut those, and that way you can position. And buy the right vent. You want a vent cap that's made for exhaust fans like that, and it's pretty easy to install, not bad at all. And then, just for the heck of it, use a little bit of what we call blackjack in the tube, which is just roofing cement in a caulking tube, just to make sure that there won't be any problem with leaks around the perimeter of it.
That sounds great, guys. It's perfect.
Good. Well, you'll be glad you did, Russ. This is a good proactive way of being a smart homeowner, and glad we can help you on it. If we can help you any other way, just let us know.
I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you very much, and you got a great show going.
We appreciate it, Russ. Thank you very much. And that's good, though. And what a great time of the year to do it before it gets really, really hot in the attic. But just people want to ignore the need for that kind of thing, Joe. And even though we talk about, it's not the most, say, glamorous or sexy home improvement project you can do. But, boy, when you're talking about the peace of mind for the quality of air that your family's breathing, man, it is well worth it for such an easy project to do.
Yeah, because you don't want to be dumping that hot, moist air into the attic. Now, Russ mentioned he has 2 bathrooms that are close by, and I hope he's not thinking of venting them both through one vent pipe, because you're really not supposed to do that, because if you hook up 2 fans to one vent pipe going through the roof, you can actually suck air from one bathroom into the other bathroom. So the building inspectors don't usually like you to do that. So he's either going to have to run 2 separate ones and poke 2 holes through the roof, or don't install 2 vent fans, but install one in the attic. It's called an inline centrifugal fan, which is you mount that in the attic, and it draws air from each bathroom and then out the roof. And that's also the quietest fan, because the fan motor is actually in the attic, not in the ceiling. But in any case, so you just don't want to hook up 2 fans to one vent stack, because it does create other problems.
I've often wondered in a lot of the hotels that I've stayed in where you don't have an exhaust fan. Right. You have something going on up there, but it's not a fan. So it's just like a large system that I guess is pulling from multiple rooms all of the time. But then I think about, you got air conditioning, you got heating, and you're pulling that conditioned air out all the time. They must have, the mechanical engineers that figure out the balance and so forth of it. And usually you don't have excessive humidity in there, but I always like to have knowing that there's a fan there that I can kick on that'll move all of that moist air out of there.
Yeah, often they just have a grill in the bathroom.
That's right.
with no fan at all, and there's an air shaft that goes through the whole building, and I'm assuming there's a fan somewhere on the roof, but maybe there isn't even that, and it's just the air just gets sucked up and out of the hotel. Yeah, when I lived in New York City, one of our apartments didn't have a fan, but it did have that vent, and it was always air blowing through there. I don't know where it was going and where it was coming from, but it was always sucking air in. So. Yeah.
Well,
I guess it worked.
I guess it works pretty well, but not. Still, I love to have that fan, knowing that it's working and knowing that air is moving out. Now it's time for our podcast question of the week, and we would love to get a question or comment from you. You can do so very easily by going to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. This one came in from Hattie in North Cross, Georgia. Hi, Danny. I recently heard you and Joe discussing installing pavers on top of an existing concrete patio. I would love to do that, but our patio is only 8 foot by 10 foot, and we need a much bigger outdoor space to entertain our family and friends. Is it best to pour another concrete slab beside the existing patio and then lay pavers across both the old and new concrete sections? I'm not sure how else to make the new section flush, and even with the existing one, which is about 3 inches high. Thanks for any of your help. Well, Hattie, you don't have to do that. That would be something that you could do, but it would just be more expensive and not necessary to do that. When you're putting down traditional concrete pavers, you're going through a process of removing any vegetation that's there, and then you're putting down a paver base, which is available at the home centers. So Home Depot has the Pavestone brand, and then you just put down 2 or 3 inch layer of that. In this case, you would want to bring it up flush with the concrete that you already have there now. And you're going to compress it. You're going to pack it down using a tamp. You can use a hand tamp. They also have motorized tamps that you can order. And just make sure that it ends up being exactly on the same plane and level with the adjacent slab, and you're ready to move forward with the installation. Of course, Joe, with what they're installing on the slab, they can glue down, but the other ones, they can just put right in a bed of sand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's going to be tricky to get it exactly even, but if you really take your time and get that compact to the right depth, it will work out, because you don't want to create a tripping hazard, obviously. And the other option is just to create an absolute change in elevation. So one is either the new section is like a step lower or a step higher or something like that. So it's really obvious that you have to step up or down. It's not just a half inch where you can trip over it. But yeah, I think but that's certainly easier than pouring in another concrete slab. Because I do remember, I think it was just last week, as Hattie must have heard us talking, someone had asked us whether she could put pavers on top of an existing slab, and you can, but you just have to make sure you have enough room for it, obviously. So when you're stepping out, you don't want to, again, have a tripping hazard, but usually the patios are at least 3 or 4 inches lower, which is plenty of room to put the pavers and not have any kind of tripping hazard at the entrance to the door in the house itself.
Right. And Hattie, we would encourage you to go to todayshomeowner.com and look up paver patio. We did several of those patios just like you're talking about, and you can see that on videos on our website. Again, it's todayshomeowner.com. Hey, have you ever had just a few questions that you're trying to get answered? You go online, you start Googling around a little bit, and you get more confused than you get answers. Unfortunately, that does happen with the plethora of information that's available out there, but here's a way to cut through all the clutter if you have questions on metal roofing. Here's all you need to do. Go to todayshomeowner.com/metal roofing. There we'll show you all the different things that you need to know about making that decision to put a metal roof on your home. 7 essential questions to ask before replacing your roof. How metal roofs protect against some of the extreme weather conditions that we experience, and also some of the metal roof benefits such as strength and energy efficiency. Again, all you have to do is go to todayshomeowner.com/metal roofing. This is a partnership between Today's Homeowner and our friends at the Metal Roofing Alliance, a nonprofit organization set up to provide you the kind of information that you expect when you're a homeowner looking for the right answers. Again, todayshomeowner.com/metal roofing. Hey, we want to say thanks a lot to everybody that took the time to send us an email this week. We are going to try to get to as many of these as we can. You can send us one right now, todayshomeowner.com/ask. And now, there's different techniques to get your question answered, Joe. And Fred King in Michigan came up with a good one by starting his question with hello, you wise and wonderful guys.
Oh, he should have been moved right to the head of the line.
I like that. Well, there's more. I love the curb appeal of my home, but the transition from the street to the driveway is rather jarring. The concrete driveway is in good shape, but the upper edge where the concrete curb transitions to the driveway needs to be ground down a little bit to provide a smoother entry. Can I grind this down myself, or is there another way to solve this problem? And he finishes by saying, thanks for all the wonderful weeks we've spent together.
Oh, that's nice. Well, thank you, Fred.
So, Fred, we appreciate that. We like your sense of humor. And as, in terms of grinding down concrete, there are a number of tools that you can buy that are pretty aggressive. Need to really pay attention to on the use of these and making sure that you use them in a safe manner. But there's a number of those rocks that attach to the bottom of some of the grinders and hand grinders themselves. But a lot of times, in order to cut through that, depending on how much we're talking about there, it may require even more of an aggressive commercial tool in order to grind that down.
Yeah, Fred has a right angle grinder. He can get the right abrasive wheel on that and not cut it, but grind it. If not, then he'd have to rent a concrete grinder. And if you ever wonder how can you possibly do that, if you've walked in any city in America where they have concrete sidewalks, you have seen this. You might not have.
That's right. Yeah.
You might not have realized what happened there, but because the concrete sidewalks are always buckling, and then what are they going to do? There's a big lip. Well, they usually, instead of fixing it permanently, they just grind it off, and you'll see that it becomes like a little ramp. And that's how they do that with a concrete grinder. And it's pretty effective. I mean, you'd be surprised because the concrete itself is relatively soft. The aggregate, the stone inside is a little hard. But these machines grind right through it. It's a loud, dusty job. But I would probably start with a angle grinder, a 3-inch or 4.5-inch angle grinder, a handheld tool, if he has one, and it's not too much concrete to grind off.
And Fred, thanks again for that humorous email.
Yes.
I hope we've been able to help you on that. And again, we'll encourage you to send us one anytime. Today'sHomeowner.com/ask. And one of the most popular parts of the Today's Homeowner Radio Show is certainly our simple solution brought to you by my buddy Joe Truini each and every week. Joe, share another one with us, will you?
All right, Dan, this is actually 4 simple solutions in one.
Wow.
Because it's 4 ways to keep your plants in your flower box or window box healthy and happy. And here you go. Number 1, be sure to drill a 3/8-inch diameter drainage hole in the bottom of the box so that the soil doesn't get soggy. You can space the holes like 6 to 8 or 8 inches apart. Then to stop the soil from washing through the drainage holes, you can cover the bottom of the box with like an inch of gravel or shards of broken clay pots, something like that. But in some cases, if you're concerned that the pots are going to get too heavy with the soil and the gravel and everything else, another simple solution is to line the bottom of the box with empty water bottles, like those 12-ounce water bottles, empty with the lid on nice and tight. This way it sort of prevents the soil from sifting through, and it doesn't hardly weigh anything. Okay, number 3, plant a variety of flowering species of different colors. And what you do is you put the low-growing, flowing vines type plants in the front, shorter plants in the middle of the flower box, the window box, then taller plants in the back. What you create is this sort of tiered presentation of plants. That always looks the best in window boxes. And this is something most people don't do, but you really should. At the end of the season, remove the boxes, empty out the soil, dry the boxes really well, and store them indoors until spring. If you leave them on, no matter what it's made out of, pressure-treated wood or not, it's probably eventually going to rot and holds moisture against the house. There's a lot of reasons to remove it. And plus, it just look like empty boxes at that point. So there you go. 4 ways to enhance your window boxes.
I love that. Tiered presentation. That's what I learned.
You like that?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
That's what happens when you sing. I have tiered presentation because I'm usually crying.
Because you're usually crying.
Yes.
I get it. I can relate to that. That's pretty good. Well, but this time of the year, Joe, it's great that you bring out all of the great simple solutions that have to do with gardening and making that a little bit easier, because there's so many people out there doing that these days. We talked a lot about raised bed gardening.
Right.
And a lot of the, of course, your article that you did for the very popular Mechanics magazine on building a greenhouse. That was just a couple months ago, right? That was in the March-April issue. That's a combined issue. So the end of April, so the May issue is probably out of newsstands, but you could find it online, of course, or if you have an old issue laying around, go to the library, they might have it. Yeah, it was only 6 by 8 feet,
And a lot of people thought, well, that's going to be too small. I go in it almost every day, and it's plenty big enough.
Especially, you have the ability to put the little shelves in. You can use the floor. You can use the shelves. And I
put a metal conduit up on the ceiling across the rafters, so you can put hanging plants there.
Exactly,
so you can fit a lot in there. It's only 6 by 8, but you can fit a lot. Yeah.
And, a greenhouse is not necessarily a place that you're going to go in and do all of the potting and doing all of these kind of things because, sometimes it's a little too warm to do that. And I'd be able to do that on a bench outside and move it in. But that's a great project and certainly a worthwhile amenity to add to your house because, heck, you can get some free food out of it, right?
That's right. Especially you live in New England where I do, we have to start inside. You're lucky down in South Alabama, but we have to start the plants indoors because it's just the growing season is too short. By the time you start producing tomatoes, it's like October. It's like you get 2 tomatoes and that's it. It's like, darn it.
Yeah. Well, it does work out pretty well. Well, that's going to wrap up the show for this week. And again, if you have a question or a comment for us that you want us to address here on the podcast, make sure you send us that email right now. todayshomeowner.com/podcast. And as always, thank you so much for those wonderful reviews we continue to receive each week, and we read and really enjoy each and every one of them. We really appreciate it. I'm Danny Lipford, along with my buddy Joe Truini, and this has been the Today's Homeowner Podcast. Talk to you soon.